Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. It seems that Air Miles Angus Robertson isn't the only one who likes to have lots of flights at public expense. We have one here for Neil Gray. He flew to Iceland, a round trip of 1,600 miles, and it cost £1,600. That's £1 a mile. And of course, at that price, you know it was business class. After all, there's nothing nicer than sitting at 30,000 feet sipping champagne, especially knowing that the taxpayer is paying for it all, not you. And of course, he had to go business class because the last thing he wants to do is sit with ordinary people like you and me, because we would tell him exactly what we think of him and he doesn't want that. And of course, eyebrows were further raised when it was seen as the reason for this flight. He flew to Iceland to talk of matters ecological, all that way to pontificate on green issues. What's wrong, Neil? Is your laptop broken? Don't you have access to Zoom? Who knows? Well, look at this article and see why he thinks he is so important that he needs to do this and why he isn't. Here goes. So taxpayers fork out over £1,600 for Neil Gray's trip to Iceland, as the minister dubbed the height of hypocrisy. Exclusive. Neil Gray's trip has been called out as hypocritical by the Scottish Tories, who say Scots are sick and tired of being lectured to by the SNP. Oh yes, you must be green, you mustn't do this. Oh, we're going to build all these bird choppers to be ever so green. Now I'm going to get on this flight and fly business class 1,600 miles so I can talk to someone about how green I am. What a hypocritical, two-faced twat he really is. Anyway, Neil Gray's trip to Iceland to discuss collaboration issues around green energy, something that cannot possibly be done on a Zoom call or on a telephone, cost taxpayers more than £1,500 and has landed the minister accusations of being the height of hypocrisy. Well, you can't get much higher than sipping champagne at 30,000 feet, I suppose. Along with the cost, Humza Yousaf's political ally has been told his actions will appall Scots, given the carbon cost of the flight to the environmental talk. Oh, the irony. How did you get here to talk about the environment and what we're doing to save it? Oh, I went on an aeroplane and burnt loads of fuel just to get my arse into this seat. It's a joke, isn't it? Anyway, Scottish Conservative Shadow Cabinet Secretary for Net Zero Energy and Transport Douglas Lumsden, MSP, put that on a business card if you will, told the Scottish Express Scots will find his actions galling, as well as having to pick up the tab for his trip during a cost of living crisis. Well, there's only a crisis for people who don't work as MSPs and MPs. They seem to be doing all right, don't they? Freedom of Information documents reveal on the 13th of June 2023, Wellbeing Economy Minister Mr Gray, well, he's looking after himself, so his being is quite well, isn't it? Flew from Glasgow Airport to Keflavik International Airport. The return journey took place on the 15th of June 2023, when Mr Gray flew from Keflavik International Airport to Glasgow Airport. This is approximately a 1,680 mile round trip, which produced 737 kilograms, 3/4 of a tonne of carbon dioxide emissions, and cost £1,676.96. So basically £1 a mile. That's rather a lot, isn't it, for a plane trip? A social media post from the time of the trip on the 14th of June said, while in Reykjavik, Wellbeing Economy Secretary at Neil Gray held talks with the Prime Minister of Iceland, Katrina Jack. I don't know what her full name is. It's going to be, isn't it Katrina Jakobsdottir or something like that. Anyway, and the Minister of Finance and Economics, Bjarni Benson, I presume. They just got their handles, it doesn't give their names. Anyway, they discussed collaboration on issues such as the wellbeing economy and green energy, because they had to do that face to face, because none of them own a phone or have a Zoom. They don't have the facility to do a Zoom meeting, apparently. Mr Lumsden added, Scots, who've typically been left to foot the bill for SME ministers' foreign trips, will be appalled at the height of hypocrisy from Neil Gray. He seemed totally oblivious to the double standards he was setting off by jetting off to Iceland on flights which produced a high level of emissions while discussing green energy during the visit. It is absolutely hypocritical. It's also absolutely wasteful. What is wrong with the man? He said Scots are sick and tired of being lectured to when it comes to tackling climate change, when they seek those asking them to do so, failing to practice what they are preaching. Oh yes, you must all give up this and give up that and give up your cars and all walk and take a bike, Meanwhile, I'll just get on this jet and fly across the Atlantic and sip champagne and enjoy my time in the air that you're paying for, because heaven forbid he pays for it himself. Anyway, close attention has been paid to trips undertaken by SNP officials after they were found to be promoting independence to foreign politicians. Mr Gray, along with Air Miles' Angus Robertson, have been among the MSPs to rack up the biggest bills. Of course they have, because they're so important in their own minds. It's only right that they travel all over the world, pushing independence, which they're not allowed to do, and doing so in business class, because their asses can't sit in a normal seat. At the end of last year, Mr Gray, who was the Minister for Culture, Europe and International Travel, International Development, certainly the international travel, at the time, built up substantial air miles, travelling 13,500 miles in a year. In his position as well, being Minister in Mr Yousaf's cabinet, he's been accused of failing to put the needs of businesses and the economy before eco-policies. Well, that's obvious. I tell you what he's putting first. He's putting everything before eco-policies, because if he was putting eco-policies first, he wouldn't have got on a plane, would he? He'd have zoomed it. Anyway, Mr Gray has been asked to respond to the comments and has failed to do so. Because, of course he has. He's got no answer, has he? Why did you fly to talk about eco matters? Why couldn't you do it from home? Why couldn't you pick up the phone? If you're only having a conversation, what's wrong with the phone? Well, the phone, you don't get champagne when you're on the phone. You don't get the joy of travelling business class and having, beautiful people treat you with respect. Because you get no respect in Scotland, do you, Neil? Because you're a twonk. Anyway, going to round off and come up. They treat us as fools, but we are not fools. And people who vote for the SNP must look at this. You must realise that when you're voting for the SNP, you're voting for the likes of Neil Gray to get his arse into business class seat and just fly there for absolutely no reason whatsoever. He just wants to feel important. He just wants to feel like he deserves this because, look, he's made it all the way to the SNP. But he really isn't important. And it's not even really, to be honest, anything to do with his department. He's just trying to invent things just to give a justification for what he does. Because what actually does he do? He doesn't do anything. His title includes the Minister for Energy, but he's not responsible for energy. You have to ask, why? He's someone who is basically the figurehead of a department, but if he wasn't there, the department would run perfectly well without him. It's pointless, isn't it? But then so many of them are pointless. Anyway, I shall stop there. Thank you very much for watching. Let's make sure we keep them all on their toes and ask them all, is that flight really necessary? Not in a days when we've now got telephones, Zoom, send a telegraph, write a letter. You don't need to be there in person, you ignorant, two-faced, hypocritical twonk. Anyway, I shall stop. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time. I will speak to you shortly. Bye.